You worked so hard on yourself. You set boundaries, you stopped chasing validation, you built a life that doesn't need anyone's permission to exist. And then something strange happened. The world got quieter. Not peaceful. Quieter. Like everyone moved 2 steps back without you noticing. You told yourself this was freedom, but some nights it feels more like exile. This is the paradox no one warns you about. Emotional independence comes at a cost, and the cost is paid in connection. Introduction. There is a stage in personal growth that almost no one talks about. It happens after you stop people-pleasing, after you learn to regulate your emotions, after you finally develop the self-respect you always thought would solve everything. You become stable, grounded, no longer reactive. You stop seeking approval from people who never really saw you anyway. You walk away from dynamics that used to consume you. And for the first time in your life, you feel like you are enough. But then the silence sets in. Not the silence of peace, the silence of distance. You notice that people don't reach out as much. Conversations feel more shallow. You are respected, but you are no longer pursued. You built the life you wanted. But it feels emptier than you expected. This is not a book about going back. It is not about lowering your standards or becoming dependent again. It is not about making yourself small so others feel comfortable. This is a book about what happens after you do everything right, and why doing everything right can sometimes feel like doing something wrong. Because emotional independence is real, but so is the loneliness that follows it. And if no one tells you that loneliness is part of the process, you will think you made a mistake. You will wonder if you pushed people away, if you became too cold, if something is broken in you. Nothing is broken. You are just standing in a place most people never reach. And from that place, the world looks different. This book will help you understand why. Chapter 1. The Quiet Cost of Independence. Why the world feels farther away. She used to text him every morning, not because she needed to, because it felt like the right thing to do. Connection, warmth, presence. He never asked her to. But she did it anyway. It made her feel close to him even when they were apart. Then she stopped, not out of anger, not to punish him. She just realized she was the only one initiating. She was the one maintaining the rhythm of their relationship. So she pulled back, not to test him, just to see what would happen if she stopped carrying the weight. Nothing happened. He did not reach out. He did not ask why she went quiet. And when they finally spoke again, he acted like nothing had changed. Like the silence was normal. Like she was always optional. That was the moment she realized something most people never put into words. She had been filling space that no one else thought was empty. This is what independence costs, not just the relationships that were never real, but the realization that many of the connections you thought were mutual were actually just you showing up over and over again. And when you stop, the structure collapses, not because anyone did anything wrong, but because it was never built on equal ground to begin with. Most people think emotional independence means you stop needing people. That is not quite right. It means you stop pretending that effort equals care. It means you stop interpreting your own investment as proof that someone values you. It means you finally see the difference between someone who wants you around and someone who got used to you being around. And once you see that difference, you cannot unsee it. Your nervous system starts to recalibrate. The dopamine hit you used to get from a reply, a like, a small sign of attention, it does not land the same way anymore. You are no longer checking your phone every 10 minutes hoping someone thought of you. You are no longer refreshing conversations in your head wondering if you said the wrong thing. You are calmer, more stable, less controlled by other people's moods. But that stability comes with a side effect. You stop participating in the social games that most relationships are built on. The constant texting, the performative enthusiasm, the unspoken rule that you are supposed to stay engaged even when nothing real is being said. You do not do those things anymore. Not because you are cold, because they feel hollow now, and when you stop playing, people notice. But they do not usually say anything, they just fade, slowly, quietly, without confrontation. One day you realize you have not heard from someone in months. And when you think back, you cannot remember the last time they reached out first. That is the part no one tells you. Independence does not just change how you relate to people. It changes how people relate to you. Because the version of you that people got attached to was the version that made things easy for them. The one who checked in, who smoothed over tension, who kept things warm even when they went cold. When you stop being that person, people do not know what to do with you. They do not dislike you, they just do not feel the same pull. Because the pull was never about you. It was about what you were willing to give without asking for anything back. So here is the mechanism. When you become emotionally independent, you stop sending out the signals that trigger reciprocal attachment. You stop seeking reassurance. You stop creating opportunities for people to feel needed. And because most human connection is built on a subtle exchange of emotional labor, when you stop offering yours, the dynamic shifts. People who were used to your energy suddenly feel the absence of it. But instead of leaning in, most of them lean out, because they were never connecting with you. They were connecting with the role you played, the listener, the supporter, the one who made them feel good about themselves. And when you step out of that role, the relationship does not evolve. It just ends. Not dramatically, just quietly, like a door closing softly in another room. This does not mean you did something wrong. It means you stopped doing something that was never yours to do in the first place. You stopped managing other people's emotional experience. You stopped being responsible for the warmth in every room you entered. You stopped compensating for other people's lack of effort. And now, you are here. More whole, more grounded, but also more alone. Because the people who loved the old version of you do not know how to love this one. And the people who could love this version have not shown up yet. So what do you do with that? How do you sit in the space between who you were and who you are becoming? How do you hold on to your boundaries without building walls so high that no one can reach you? You start by understanding that loneliness is not a sign you went too far. It is a sign you went far enough. It is the gap between the life you left and the life you have not fully built yet. And that gap is supposed to feel uncomfortable, because you are no longer settling. You are no longer filling your life with people who only show up halfway. You are making space for something real, but space feels empty before it gets filled. Here is what you can do. Write down the names of 5 people you have regular contact with. Next to each name, write the last time they reached out to you first. Not to ask for something. Not because they needed something, just to connect. If the list is mostly blank, you are not imagining the distance, it is real. And recognizing it is not bitterness, it is clarity. Now ask yourself this: if I stopped initiating, what would remain? Not as a test, not to prove a point, but as an honest assessment of where you actually stand in people's lives. Because the relationships that survive your independence are the ones worth keeping, and the ones that dissolve were never built to hold you in the first place. This chapter is not about blaming anyone. It is about seeing the pattern. The pattern where you were the one holding things together. And when you let go, everything scattered. That scattering is not failure, it is information. It is your nervous system finally telling you the truth. You were working too hard to be loved. And now that you stopped, you can see who was actually willing to meet you halfway. Most people never get here. They stay in the cycle, chasing warmth, interpreting effort as connection, believing that if they just try harder, people will finally see them. But you got out. And yes, it is lonelier on this side, but it is also more honest. And honest is the only foundation worth building on. Chapter 2. The Approval Withdrawal. What happens when you stop chasing? He used to apologize for everything, not just the big things, the small things, the things that were not even his fault. He apologized for speaking too much, for not speaking enough, for having an opinion that made someone uncomfortable, for taking up space in a conversation. He did not realize he was doing it. It just felt safer that way. Then one day he stopped. He did not plan it. He just got tired of shrinking, tired of reading the room before deciding who he was allowed to be in it, tired of performing agreeableness to avoid conflict. So he stopped checking people's faces for approval before finishing his sentences. He stopped softening his words to make them easier to swallow. He just said what he meant, calmly, directly, without the usual cushion of self-deprecation. The shift was immediate. People did not argue with him. They just looked at him differently, like he had broken an unspoken rule, like he was suddenly less warm, less safe, less likable. Some people pulled back entirely, not because he was rude, but because he was no longer working to make them comfortable. That is when he realized something. Most of his relationships were not built on mutual respect. They were built on his willingness to manage other people's comfort. And the moment he stopped doing that, the foundation cracked. This is what approval withdrawal looks like. You stop performing. You stop softening yourself. You stop bending to avoid tension. And the people who were used to your accommodation suddenly do not know what to do with you. They do not say you changed. They just say you are different now. And they mean it as a criticism. Because to them, different means difficult. And difficult means not worth the effort. But here is the thing. You did not become difficult. You became honest. And honesty, when people are used to performance, feels like hostility. Most people spend their entire lives in approval-seeking mode. Not because they are weak, but because the nervous system is wired to prioritize belonging over authenticity. Your brain does not care if you are happy. It cares if you are safe. And for most of human history, safety meant being accepted by the group. Rejection meant exile. Exile meant death. So your nervous system learned to scan every interaction for signs of disapproval. A slight change in tone, a pause that lasts too long, a facial expression that seems off. And when it detected those signs, it triggered a cascade of stress hormones designed to make you adjust your behavior, to smooth things over, to get back in alignment with what the group expected. That system kept your ancestors alive, but it is destroying your authenticity. Because every time you adjust yourself to avoid disapproval, you reinforce the idea that the real you is not acceptable. You teach your nervous system that connection requires performance. And over time, you lose track of where the performance ends and the real you begins. When you stop chasing approval, you are not just changing your behavior. You are rewiring your nervous system. You are telling it that belonging is not more important than integrity, that being liked is not more valuable than being real, that you would rather be alone and whole than connected and fractured. And your nervous system does not like that, because it interprets the loss of approval as a threat. It does not understand that you are choosing this. It just sees people pulling away and assumes you are in danger. So it floods you with anxiety, with doubt, with the urge to go back and fix things, to apologize, to smooth it over, to return to the version of yourself that people preferred. That urge is not weakness, it is biology. Your brain is trying to protect you from what it perceives as social death. But you are not dying, you are just becoming visible. And visibility, when you have spent years hiding, feels unbearably exposed. Here is what happens in real life. You stop laughing at jokes that are not funny. You stop pretending to be interested in conversations that drain you. You stop saying yes to things you do not want to do just to avoid disappointing someone. You stop performing enthusiasm when you feel neutral. You stop apologizing for existing. And people notice, not always consciously, but they feel it. They feel the absence of your effort, the lack of your accommodation, the space where your agreeableness used to be. And instead of adjusting to meet you, most of them just drift, because they were never connecting with you. They were connecting with the service you provided, the emotional labor, the validation, the reassurance that they were good people because someone like you was willing to orbit around them. When you stop orbiting, they do not chase you. They find someone else who will. This is not cynical. This is just how most relationships work. People bond over patterns, not depth. And when the pattern breaks, the bond weakens. It does not mean they are bad people. It just means they were never equipped to meet you as an equal. They were only equipped to receive what you were willing to give. So what does this feel like from the inside? It feels like grief. Not the sharp grief of losing someone you love. The dull grief of realizing you were never fully seen. That the version of you people praised was the version that made their lives easier. That the moment you stopped making things easy, you stopped being valuable. And that grief sits heavy, because part of you wants to go back, to be the person people liked, to smooth your edges so you fit again, to trade authenticity for warmth, because at least warmth feels like something, at least it fills the space. But you cannot go back, not really, because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Once you feel the weight of constant performance, you cannot carry it the same way. Once you know what it costs to be liked, you cannot pay that price anymore. Not without resenting yourself, not without feeling like you are abandoning the part of you that fought so hard to be free. So you stay in the gap, the space between who you were and who you are becoming. The space where approval no longer drives you but connection has not yet found you. The space where you are more yourself than ever but lonelier than you have been in years. And in that space, something subtle starts to shift. You stop checking your phone hoping someone thought of you. You stop replaying conversations wondering if you said the wrong thing. You stop interpreting silence as rejection. Because rejection, you realize, only hurts when you are still asking for permission to be yourself. And you are not asking anymore. That does not mean it stops hurting. It just means the hurt is clean now. It is not tangled with shame or self-blame. It is not laced with the question of what you could have done differently. It is just the simple ache of being unseen by people you wish could see you. And that ache, painful as it is easier to carry than the weight of pretending. Here is the mechanism at work. When you stop seeking approval, your dopamine system recalibrates. The small hits of validation you used to get from likes, replies, compliments, they stop registering as rewards. Your brain stops treating social approval as a primary need. It stops scanning for external feedback to determine your worth. This is good. This is growth. But it also means you lose access to the easy highs that used to keep you engaged. You lose the rush of being praised, the relief of being included, the comfort of knowing you are liked. And in the absence of those highs, everything feels flatter. Not worse, just less stimulating, less urgent, less emotionally charged. Most people interpret this flatness as depression. They think something is wrong. They think they broke themselves by setting boundaries, but this is not depression. This is regulation. This is what emotional stability actually feels like. It does not feel like excitement. It feels like calm. And calm, when you are used to chaos, can feel like emptiness. So here is the exercise. Make a list of the last 10 times you adjusted your behavior to avoid disapproval. Write down what you wanted to say but did not, what you wanted to do but held back, what you felt but performed the opposite of. Look at the list. Notice the pattern. Notice how much energy you spent managing other people's perception of you. Now imagine what would happen if you stopped, not all at once, not recklessly, but gradually. What if you said what you meant? What if you stopped laughing at things that are not funny? What if you let people be uncomfortable without rushing to fix it? The answer is not that everyone would leave. Some would. But the ones who stay would finally be seeing you. Not the performance, not the version you thought they needed. You. And that version, rough and unpolished as it might be, is the only one worth knowing. Because it is the only one that is real. Chapter 3. Attachment after strength. Why your nervous system feels unsafe. She thought healing meant she would finally feel safe, that once she worked through her triggers, set her boundaries, learned to self-soothe, she would stop scanning every room for danger. She thought emotional independence would bring peace. Instead, it brought a different kind of tension, not the panic of abandonment. Something quieter, something harder to name. She was not afraid of being left anymore. She was afraid of staying, afraid of letting someone in, afraid that if she opened up, she would lose the stability she fought so hard to build. So she kept people at arm's length, not consciously, not cruelly. She just never let anyone get close enough to matter. And the strange part was she did not even realize she was doing it until someone pointed it out. He told her she felt distant, that even when she was present, she was not really there. That he could not read her, could not reach her. She wanted to argue, to say she was trying. But deep down, she knew he was right. She had built walls so high that even she could not see over them anymore. This is what happens after you become strong. Your nervous system does not celebrate. It recalibrates, and sometimes it overcorrects. Because the part of your brain that kept you safe through chaos does not understand that the chaos is over. It still thinks closeness equals danger. It still thinks vulnerability equals weakness. It still thinks letting someone matter gives them the power to destroy you. So it keeps you safe the only way it knows how. By keeping everyone out. Most people think attachment issues only show up in anxious people. The ones who cling, who panic when someone pulls away, who need constant reassurance. But avoidant attachment is just as much a wound. It just hides better. It looks like independence, like self-sufficiency, like strength. But underneath it is the same fear. The same belief that people will hurt you if you let them close enough. The difference is, anxious attachment says love me before you leave me. Avoidant attachment says I will leave before you get the chance. Both are survival strategies. Both are ways the nervous system tries to protect you from the pain it remembers. And both keep you from the connection you actually want. When you do the work to heal anxious attachment, you stop chasing. You stop people-pleasing. You stop seeking external validation. And that is progress. Real progress. But if you are not careful, you can swing too far in the other direction. You can go from needing people too much to not letting yourself need them at all. From giving too much to giving nothing. From being overly available to being completely unavailable. And the tricky part is this new version feels safer. It feels like growth. Because you are no longer at the mercy of other people's moods. You are no longer devastated when someone does not text back. You are no longer waiting for someone to choose you. You are choosing yourself. And that is good. That is necessary. But somewhere along the way, choosing yourself became the same thing as excluding everyone else. And now, you are strong, stable, independent, and completely alone. Here is what is happening in your nervous system. When you were anxiously attached, your brain treated connection as survival. Every interaction was a test. Every silence was a threat. Every sign of distance triggered a full-blown alarm. Your amygdala was constantly activated. Your cortisol levels stayed elevated. Your body lived in a state of chronic stress because it believed that losing connection meant losing everything. Then you healed. You learned that you could survive without constant reassurance. You proved to yourself that you did not need anyone to feel whole. And your nervous system started to calm down. The alarms stopped firing. The panic faded. You stopped living in crisis mode. But here is the thing. Your nervous system did not just learn that you can survive alone. It learned that being alone is safer, that needing no one protects you from being hurt. That independence is the only way to stay in control. So now, instead of panicking when people leave, you panic when people stay, when they get too close, when they start to matter. Because mattering means risk, and your nervous system is done with risk. So it throws up barriers, not obvious ones, subtle ones. You stop sharing how you really feel. You keep conversations surface level. You do not make plans too far in advance. You do not let anyone see you when you are struggling. You stay warm enough to seem open but distant enough to stay safe. And most people do not push. They just assume you are private, independent, self-sufficient. They do not realize you are terrified. This is how avoidant attachment disguises itself as strength. It looks like you have it all together, like you do not need anyone, like you are fine on your own. And you are fine. That is the truth. But fine is not the same as fulfilled, and being okay alone is not the same as being okay with connection. The question is not whether you can survive without people. You already proved you can. The question is whether you are willing to let people in even though they could hurt you. Whether you are willing to be seen even though you might be rejected. Whether you are willing to need someone even though that need makes you vulnerable. And right now the answer is no. Not because you are broken, but because your nervous system is still in protection mode. It still believes that vulnerability is dangerous, that closeness is a trap, that the only way to stay safe is to stay alone. So what does this look like in real life? You meet someone who feels safe, who is consistent, who shows up, who does not play games, and instead of feeling relieved, you feel suspicious. You wait for the other shoe to drop. You look for red flags. You find reasons to keep your distance, not because they did anything wrong, but because they are doing everything right. And that terrifies you. Because if they are good, you might let them in. And if you let them in, they might leave. And if they leave, it will hurt. Not the way it used to hurt. You are stronger now. But it will still hurt. And your nervous system would rather avoid that possibility entirely. So it convinces you that you do not really like them, that something is off, that you are better off alone. Or maybe you are already in a relationship, and it is good, stable, healthy. But you still feel the urge to run, to create distance, to pick a fight so you have an excuse to pull away. Not because you do not care, but because caring feels like losing control. And losing control feels like the beginning of the end. So you sabotage, not dramatically, just slowly. You stop being as present. You stop sharing as much. You start building an exit in your mind. Not because you want to leave, but because knowing you could leave makes staying feel less suffocating. This is not cruelty. This is not coldness. This is fear. Fear that has learned to dress itself up as independence. Fear that has convinced you that needing no one is the same as being free. But it is not freedom. It is a different kind of cage. One you built yourself. One that keeps you safe but keeps you small. Here is the mechanism. Avoidant attachment is not about not wanting connection. It is about not believing connection is safe. Your nervous system learned probably early that people are unpredictable, that closeness leads to pain, That depending on someone gives them power over you, so it built defenses, walls, distance, and those defenses worked. They kept you from getting hurt. They kept you functional. They kept you alive. But now those same defenses are keeping you from the connection you actually want, because you cannot have intimacy without vulnerability. You cannot have depth without risk. You cannot have real connection while keeping everyone at arm's length. And the longer you stay behind those walls, the lonelier you get. Not the desperate loneliness of anxious attachment. The quiet loneliness of knowing you are safe but wondering if safe is all you will ever be. So here is the exercise. Think about the last time someone tried to get close to you. Really close, not just physically, emotionally. The last time someone asked how you were really doing. The last time someone wanted to talk about something real. The last time someone tried to see you, not just the version you show the world. What did you do? Did you let them in? Or did you deflect? Joke? Change the subject? Reassure them you were fine? Did you give them just enough to seem open but not enough to actually be seen? Now ask yourself why. Not in a judgmental way, just honestly. What were you protecting yourself from? What were you afraid would happen if you let them see the real you? The part that is not always strong. The part that still hurts. The part that wants connection but is scared to admit it. Write it down. Because until you name the fear, you cannot challenge it. And until you challenge it, you will keep building walls and wondering why no one can reach you. You will keep choosing safety over connection. And safety, as much as your nervous system craves it, will never be enough. Chapter 4. The Identity Shift. When you cannot return to who you were. He kept trying to go back to old conversations, not because he missed them, because he wanted to prove to himself that he could still connect the way he used to. That becoming more grounded did not make him less human. That setting boundaries did not mean he lost the ability to be warm. But every time he tried, it felt forced. Like wearing clothes that used to fit but did not anymore. The jokes felt flat. The small talk felt exhausting. The energy he used to bring to those spaces was just gone. Not because he was depressed, not because he stopped caring, but because he was not that person anymore. And no amount of effort could bring that version of him back. He felt guilty about it, like he owed people the version of himself they got used to. Like changing was a betrayal, like growth was something he should apologize for. So he kept showing up, kept pretending, kept trying to be who he was before he knew what he knows now. But it did not work. People could feel it, the distance, the shift, the fact that he was there but not really there. And the more he tried to force it, the more exhausted he became. Until one day he stopped trying. He just accepted that he could not go back. And that acceptance felt like losing something. Even though what he lost was not real to begin with. This is the identity shift. The moment you realize that growth is not addition, it is replacement. You do not just gain new perspectives, you lose old ones. You do not just develop new boundaries, you outgrow old dynamics. You do not just become stronger, you become someone else. Someone who cannot fit into the spaces you used to occupy. Someone who cannot relate to the person you used to be. And no one prepares you for that loss. Because it is not supposed to feel like loss. It is supposed to feel like progress, like leveling up, like becoming the person you were always meant to be. And it is those things. But it is also grief. The grief of realizing that the life you built does not fit you anymore. That the people you love do not understand you anymore. That the version of you they fell in love with does not exist anymore. Most people think identity is fixed. That you are born a certain way and you just become more of that over time. But that is not how it works. Identity is not a core you uncover, it is a structure you build. And when you heal, when you grow, when you set boundaries and stop performing, You are not revealing your true self. You are dismantling the self you built to survive and building a new one from scratch. That process is not peaceful. It is disorienting. Because you are not just changing your behavior, you are changing the entire framework through which you see the world. The things that used to matter stop mattering. The things that used to hurt stop registering. The things that used to excite you feel empty, and the things that used to comfort you feel suffocating. You are not who you were, and you are not yet who you are becoming. You are in between, and in between feels like nowhere. Here is what happens in your brain. Your sense of self is not stored in one place. It is a network, a collection of memories, beliefs, patterns, associations, predictions. Every time you interact with the world, your brain uses that network to decide who you are and how you should respond. It is fast, automatic, efficient. But when you change, when you heal, when you grow, that network gets disrupted. The old patterns do not work anymore. The old beliefs do not hold up. The old ways of relating to people feel inauthentic, so your brain has to rebuild. It has to create new pathways, new associations, new predictions, and that rebuilding takes time, energy, patience. During that process, you feel unstable, like you do not know who you are anymore, like you lost your footing, like you are pretending to be someone you are not, but you are not pretending. You are just learning how to be this new version of yourself, learning how to move through the world without the old coping mechanisms, learning how to connect without performing, learning how to exist without shrinking. And that learning period is awkward. You say things that do not land. You set boundaries that feel too harsh. You pull back in moments where the old you would have leaned in. You stay quiet when the old you would have filled the silence. You feel like you are doing it wrong, like you are being too cold, too distant, too much, or not enough. But you are not doing it wrong. You are just doing it differently. And differently always feels wrong at first. Here is what it looks like in real life. You go to a family gathering. Everyone is laughing, joking, engaging in the same dynamics they always have. And you used to participate, used to match their energy, used to play your role in the system. But now you sit there and you feel like an outsider, like you are watching from behind glass. You are not judging them. You are not above them. You just do not belong there anymore, and that realization is devastating. Because you did not leave. You just changed, and changing was enough to make you unrecognizable. Or you run into an old friend, someone you used to talk to for hours, someone who knew you, who got you. But now the conversation feels strained, shallow, like you are both trying to connect to a version of each other that does not exist anymore. You want to tell them what you have been learning, what you have been working through. But you know they would not understand, not because they are not smart, but because they are not in the same place. So you keep it light, keep it safe, and walk away feeling lonelier than if you had not seen them at all. Or you are in a relationship, and your partner keeps trying to engage with you the way they used to. They want the version of you who was more available, more expressive, more emotionally reactive. They do not say it out loud, but you can feel it. The confusion, the frustration, the sense that you are pulling away even though you are still there. And you do not know how to explain that you are not pulling away. You are just not performing anymore. And without the performance, you do not know how to show love in a way they recognize. This is the cost of the identity shift. You lose familiarity. You lose the comfort of being known. You lose the ease of fitting in. Because the person people knew was not fully you. It was a version you built to survive, to belong, to be accepted. And now that you do not need to survive that way anymore, that version is gone. And the real you, the one emerging in its place, is a stranger, even to yourself. So how do you navigate this? How do you live in the gap between who you were and who you are becoming? How do you hold on to your growth without feeling like you lost yourself in the process? You start by grieving. Not the loss of people, the loss of the person you were, the version of you who tried so hard, who gave so much, who bent and adapted and performed. That version kept you safe, kept you connected, kept you functional, and now that version is gone. And it is okay to miss it. Even if it was not real, even if it was exhausting, it was still yours. And letting it go is hard, but you cannot keep it. You cannot be who you were and who you are at the same time. You cannot hold on to old patterns while building new ones. You cannot stay in spaces that require you to shrink, not without betraying the part of you that fought so hard to expand. So you grieve. You let yourself feel the loss. You acknowledge that growth is not just gain. It is also subtraction. It is also saying goodbye to people, to places, to versions of yourself that no longer serve you. And that goodbye, painful as it is necessary, because you cannot build a new identity while clinging to the old one. Here is the exercise. Write a letter to the version of yourself you used to be, the one who people pleased, who avoided conflict, who stayed small to keep the peace. Thank that version. Acknowledge what it did for you, how it kept you safe, how it helped you survive. Then tell that version it is time to rest, that you do not need it anymore, that you are strong enough now to be seen, to take up space, to exist without apologizing. Tell it that you are not abandoning it, you are just growing past it, and that growth, uncomfortable as it is the only way forward. You do not have to send the letter, you do not have to show anyone. This is just for you. Just a way to mark the shift, to honor what was, and to make space for what is coming. Because the person you are becoming deserves space, deserves recognition, deserves to exist without constantly being compared to the person you used to be. You are not that person anymore, and that is not a failure, that is the point. Chapter 5, Emotional Boundaries versus Emotional Walls. The lonely mistake. She learned to say no, and at first it felt powerful, like she was finally taking control of her life, like she was finally protecting her energy. She stopped saying yes to things she did not want to do, stopped attending events that drained her, stopped forcing herself to be available to people who only reached out when they needed something. Her calendar cleared. Her phone went quiet. And for a while, that quiet felt like relief, like she had finally created space to breathe, space to focus on herself, space to heal without constant interruption. But then the space started to feel less like freedom and more like isolation. Not because she was lonely, but because she realized she had not just set boundaries. She had built walls, and now she did not know how to let anyone in even when she wanted to. Someone would reach out. Someone genuine. Someone who was not asking for anything, just connecting. And instead of feeling warm, she felt guarded, suspicious, like they must want something, like if she engaged, she would lose the peace she worked so hard to build. So she kept the conversation short, polite but distant, and they stopped trying. Not because they did not care, but because she gave them nothing to hold on to. This is the mistake most people make when they first learn about boundaries. They think boundaries are about keeping people out, about protecting yourself from being hurt, about saying no to everything that feels uncomfortable. And in the beginning, that is what you need. You need to learn that you do not owe anyone your energy, that you are allowed to prioritize yourself, that saying no does not make you selfish. But boundaries are not walls. Walls keep everyone out. Boundaries let the right people in. Walls are rigid. Boundaries are flexible. Walls are about fear. Boundaries are about discernment. And if you do not understand the difference, You will end up safe but completely alone. Here is how to tell the difference. A boundary is a decision based on your values. A wall is a reaction based on your fear. A boundary says, I will not tolerate disrespect, but I am open to people who treat me well. A wall says, I will not let anyone close enough to hurt me, so I will keep everyone at a distance. A boundary protects your peace without isolating you. A wall protects you from pain, but also from connection. A boundary is conscious. A wall is automatic. A boundary requires thought. A wall is a reflex. Most people do not realize they built walls until they notice that no one is trying to climb them anymore. They think they are just protecting themselves, just being selective, just choosing quality over quantity. And those things are true, but somewhere along the way, selective became closed. Quality became impossible. And quantity became zero. Here is what happens in your nervous system. When you have been hurt repeatedly, when you have given too much and received too little, when you have been taken advantage of or dismissed or betrayed, your brain starts to categorize closeness as danger. It does not matter if the person in front of you is safe. Your amygdala does not care about logic. It cares about pattern recognition. And the pattern it recognizes is that letting people in leads to pain. So it activates your defenses, not just when someone crosses a line. All the time. It treats every attempt at connection as a potential threat. It scans for red flags even when there are none. It convinces you that distance is safety, that vulnerability is weakness, that letting your guard down is the first step toward getting hurt again. And you listen, because your nervous system has kept you alive this far. Because the pain of loneliness feels more manageable than the pain of betrayal. Because being alone is something you can control. And being close to someone means giving up that control. So you stay behind the wall. You tell yourself you are just being careful, just protecting your energy, just waiting for the right person. But the truth is, you are not waiting. You are hiding. And no one can find you when you are hiding, not even the people who are actually looking. Here is what it looks like in practice. Someone invites you to something. A casual hangout, low pressure, no expectations. And instead of just saying yes or no based on whether you want to go, you analyze it. What do they want from me? Are they going to expect something in return? Will this turn into a recurring obligation? Will I regret opening this door? So you say no, or you say maybe and then never follow up, and they stop inviting you. Not because they are offended, but because they assume you are not interested. They do not know you are scared. They just know you are unavailable, and most people do not push past unavailable. They just move on. Or someone asks how you are doing. Really asks. Not the surface-level version. The real version. And you deflect. You say you are fine. You change the subject. You make a joke. Because answering honestly feels like handing them a piece of you. And you are not sure they will handle it with care. So you keep it. You stay safe. And they walk away thinking you do not need anyone. That you have it all figured out. That you are fine on your own. And you are fine. That is the thing. You are functional, stable, independent. But fine is not the same as connected. And being okay alone is not the same as being okay with intimacy. You built a life that does not need anyone. But somewhere along the way, you stopped wanting anyone too. Not because you do not crave connection, but because wanting something you are too scared to reach for is more painful than pretending you do not want it at all. This is how walls disguise themselves as strength. They make you look independent, self-sufficient. Like you do not need anyone. And people admire that. They see you as strong, as someone who has it together, as someone who does not need validation or reassurance or support. And you let them think that, because letting them see the truth that you are terrified of being seen feels more vulnerable than staying hidden. But here is the cost. The more you hide, the lonelier you get. Not the surface-level loneliness of not having plans. The deep loneliness of not being known, of going through life with a version of yourself that no one can touch, of having people around you but no one really with you. And the worst part is, you did this to yourself. Not on purpose, not maliciously. But you built the wall, you reinforced it, you convinced yourself it was necessary. And now, you are stuck behind it, and you do not know how to come out without feeling like you are going to get destroyed. So what do you do? How do you dismantle a wall without leaving yourself defenseless? How do you open up without going back to the version of yourself that gave too much? How do you let people in without losing the peace you worked so hard to build? You start by understanding that vulnerability is not the same as weakness, that letting someone see you does not mean letting them control you, that being open does not mean being available to everyone, that you can have boundaries and intimacy at the same time. They are not opposites, they are partners. A boundary without connection is a wall. Connection without boundaries is codependency. You need both. You need to know what you will tolerate and what you will not. But you also need to know when to let someone pass the gate, when to take the risk, when to trust that not everyone is out to hurt you. Here is the exercise. Think of someone in your life right now who has shown up consistently, who has not asked for anything, who has respected your space but also tried to connect. Someone who feels safe, not perfect, just safe. Now ask yourself this. What would happen if you let them a little closer? Not all the way in, just a step. What would happen if you answered honestly the next time they asked how you are? What would happen if you said yes to an invitation without overthinking it? What would happen if you shared something real instead of keeping everything surface level? The answer is not that you will get hurt. Maybe you will. Maybe you will not. But the real answer is that you will find out if connection is possible, if intimacy is something you can still do, if the wall you built is protecting you or imprisoning you. Because right now you do not know. You have been behind the wall so long that you do not remember what it feels like to be seen. And the only way to find out is to let someone try. Not everyone. Just one person. Just once. Just to prove to yourself that you can still do it. That you did not lose the ability to connect when you learned to protect yourself. Boundaries are meant to filter, not block. They are meant to keep out what harms you and let in what nourishes you. But if everything feels like a threat, if everyone feels like a risk, if every attempt at closeness triggers your defenses, then you are not filtering. You are blocking. And blocking keeps you safe, but it also keeps you alone. The question is not whether you can survive alone. You already know you can. The question is whether that is all you want. Safety, distance, peace, or whether you are willing to risk a little bit of that peace for the chance at something more. Something real, something that requires you to be seen. Even if being seen is the scariest thing you can imagine. Chapter 6. Why you reject closeness without realizing it. He noticed it first in small moments. A friend would offer help and he would say he was fine. A co-worker would invite him to lunch and he would say he already had plans. Someone would compliment him and he would deflect or make a joke. He was not trying to push people away. He just did not know how to let them close. At first, he thought it was just his personality, that he was independent, self-sufficient, someone who did not need much from others, but then he started paying attention, and he realized it was not that he did not need people. It was that he did not know how to receive. He could give, he could show up, he could be there for others, but the moment someone tried to be there for him, he shut it down. Not aggressively, just quietly, automatically. Like his body had a reflex that said no thank you before his mind even processed what was being offered. He did not understand why until someone called him out on it. She said, "You do not let anyone in. You are warm, but you are closed. You make people feel good, but you never let them make you feel anything. You are present, but you are protected." And I do not know how to get past that. He wanted to argue, to say she was wrong, but she was not. He had spent so long learning not to need anyone that he forgot how to let anyone matter. And now, even when he wanted connection, his nervous system would not allow it. It treated closeness like a threat, and it protected him by rejecting it before it could reject him. This is one of the most invisible ways emotional independence becomes loneliness. You do not push people away dramatically. You do not cut them off or tell them to leave. You just say no in 1,000 small ways. Ways you do not even notice. Ways that seem harmless. Ways that look like boundaries but feel like rejection to everyone on the receiving end. You say no to help even when you need it. You say no to invitations even when you want to go. You say no to vulnerability even when someone has earned it. You say no to being seen even when someone is trying to see you. And every no builds distance. Every deflection adds space. Every refusal to let someone in sends the message that you do not want them there. Even if that is not true. Even if what you actually want is for them to stay. Your behavior says otherwise, and people believe behavior, not intention. Here is what is happening underneath. When you have been hurt, rejected, or abandoned, your brain learns to associate closeness with pain. It does not matter if the pain was intentional. It does not matter if it was years ago. Your nervous system does not operate on logic. It operates on survival. And if closeness led to pain in the past, your brain will do everything it can to prevent closeness in the future. So it creates what psychologists call a push-pull dynamic. You want connection. You crave intimacy. You feel the loneliness. But the moment someone gets close, your nervous system panics. It floods you with discomfort, with the urge to retreat, with the feeling that something is wrong, not with them, just with the situation, with the closeness itself. And because that discomfort feels urgent, feels real, you listen to it, you pull back, you create distance, you convince yourself that you need space, that you are not ready, that something about this person is not quite right. You do not realize that the discomfort is not a warning. It is just your nervous system doing what it was trained to do. Protect you from the possibility of being hurt again. But protection and connection cannot coexist, not fully. You can have one or the other, or you can have moments of both, but never at the same time. When you are protecting yourself, you are closed. When you are connecting, you are open. And being open always feels risky, always feels vulnerable, always feels like you are one step away from getting hurt. So most people choose protection. They choose the safety of distance over the risk of intimacy. And they do not realize they are choosing it. They think they are just being cautious, just taking their time, just making sure someone is trustworthy before letting them in. But trustworthy is not a fixed state. It is a threshold that keeps moving. Because the closer someone gets, the more your nervous system raises the bar. The more it finds reasons to doubt. The more it convinces you that maybe this person is not safe after all. Here is what it looks like in real life. You meet someone who feels different, who is consistent, who shows up, who does not play games, and instead of feeling relief, you feel skepticism. You wait for them to mess up. You look for signs that they are not who they seem. You test them without realizing you are testing them. And when they pass the test, you do not relax, you just create a new test. Because your nervous system is not trying to find someone safe. It is trying to confirm that no one is safe. So it can justify keeping the walls up. Or you are already close to someone. And they do something kind. They show up when you are struggling. They offer support without you asking. And instead of feeling grateful, you feel uncomfortable. Like you owe them something now. Like accepting their help puts you in debt. Like being cared for is a trap. So you minimize what they did. You say it was not a big deal. You insist you would have been fine without them. Not because you are ungrateful, but because gratitude feels like vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like danger. Or someone tells you they care about you, and instead of saying it back, you make a joke, you change the subject, you deflect with humor or sarcasm or by turning the attention back on them. Because hearing that someone cares activates something in you that feels unbearable, not because you do not want to be cared for, but because being cared for means you matter to them. And mattering to them means they could hurt you. And the possibility of being hurt feels more threatening than the loneliness of staying distant. This is the pattern. You reject closeness not because you do not want it, but because wanting it and losing it feels worse than never having it at all. So you protect yourself by making sure you never fully have it. You stay close enough to avoid complete isolation, but distant enough to avoid real intimacy. You exist in a middle space, a space where you are never fully alone but never fully connected. And that space, over time, becomes unbearably lonely. Because you are not being rejected by others, you are rejecting yourself. You are deciding on a subconscious level that you are not worth being close to, that you are too much, too broken, too complicated, that anyone who tries to get close will eventually see that and leave. So you leave first, not physically, just emotionally. You stay in the relationship, but you stop being present in it. You stay in the friendship, but you stop letting it go deep. You stay in the dynamic, but you stop letting it matter. And the other person feels it. They do not always know what they are feeling. They just know something is off. That you are there, but not really there. That they can reach you, but they cannot reach you. That you are warm, but untouchable. And most people do not know what to do with that, so they stop trying. Not because they do not care, but because trying to connect with someone who keeps saying no is exhausting, and they do not want to force themselves on you. So they back off, and you interpret their backing off as proof that you were right, that people always leave, that closeness never lasts, that you are better off alone. But that is not what happened. What happened is you trained them to leave. You made it so difficult to get close to you that staying felt like work. And most people, even the good ones, do not have the energy to work that hard. Not because they do not care, but because care requires reciprocity. And you were not reciprocating. You were deflecting, dodging, protecting. And protection, no matter how necessary it feels, reads like rejection to everyone on the outside. So how do you stop? How do you let people in when your entire nervous system is wired to keep them out? How do you override the reflex to say no when someone offers closeness? You start by noticing, by paying attention to the moments when you instinctively pull back. When someone offers help and you say you are fine. When someone invites you somewhere and you make an excuse. When someone tries to go deeper and you steer the conversation back to the surface. Notice those moments. Do not judge them, just notice. Then ask yourself what you are protecting yourself from. Not what the other person might do. What you are afraid will happen if you say yes. If you let them help. If you let them see you, if you let them matter, the answer is usually some version of I am afraid they will leave. I am afraid they will hurt me. I am afraid I will need them and they will not be there. And those fears are valid. Those things could happen. People do leave. People do hurt each other. People do let each other down. But those things can happen whether you let them close or not. The only difference is if you keep them at a distance, you never find out if they would have stayed. You never give them the chance to prove that not everyone leaves, that not everyone hurts you, that some people, the right people, will show up even when it is hard. Here is the exercise. The next time someone offers you something, help, connection, vulnerability, say yes. Not because you need it, just to practice receiving, just to prove to yourself that accepting something from someone does not make you weak, does not put you in debt, does not mean you are going to get hurt. Say yes to the invitation even if you feel like saying no. Say yes to the help even if you could do it yourself. Say yes to the conversation even if it makes you uncomfortable. Just once. Just to see what happens. Because the only way to rewire the reflex to reject closeness is to practice allowing it. And practice feels awkward, uncomfortable, wrong. But it is the only way through. You cannot think your way out of this pattern. You have to act your way out. You have to prove to your nervous system that closeness is not always dangerous, that being seen is not always painful, that letting someone in does not always lead to being let down. And the only way to prove that is to take the risk, not recklessly, not with everyone, but with someone. Just one person who has shown up, who has earned the chance, who deserves to see you even if seeing you feels terrifying. Because you are not protecting yourself anymore. You are isolating yourself. And isolation dressed up as self-protection is still isolation. It still hurts. It still leaves you alone. And at some point you have to decide what you are more afraid of. The pain of being hurt by someone, or the pain of never being known by anyone. Chapter 7. High Standards. Low warmth. How strength can read like coldness. She did not think she was cold. She thought she was clear. She knew what she wanted. She knew what she would not tolerate. She had standards, boundaries, self-respect. She was not going to settle for less than she deserved, and she was not going to pretend to be okay with things that were not okay just to keep the peace. But people kept telling her she was intimidating, that she was hard to read, that she seemed unapproachable. And she did not understand it. She was not mean. She was not rude. She just was not going out of her way to make people comfortable anymore. She was not softening her edges to seem more palatable. She was not performing warmth to compensate for having standards. And apparently that made her cold. At first she dismissed it. She thought people just were not used to women who did not shrink, who did not apologize for existing, who did not smile to ease tension. She thought the problem was theirs, not hers. And maybe it was. But the result was the same. People kept their distance. They respected her. They did not cross her, but they also did not come close. And she could not figure out why. Then someone she trusted told her the truth. You are not cold, but you feel cold. You have high standards but no warmth. You have boundaries but no openness. You have strength but no softness. And people do not know how to approach that. They do not know if you want them around or if you are just tolerating them. So they do not try. Because trying feels like risking rejection. And most people would rather stay at a distance than risk being rejected by someone who seems like they do not need anyone. That hit her harder than she expected. Because she did want people around. She did want connection. She just did not want the wrong kind. She did not want people who would cross her boundaries, who would disrespect her, who would expect her to shrink to make them feel bigger. So she kept her guard up. And her guard, strong as it was, looked like a wall. This is the trap of high standards without warmth. You are not wrong for having standards. You are not wrong for protecting yourself. You are not wrong for refusing to tolerate disrespect or inconsistency or half-hearted effort. But if all people see is what you will not accept, they never find out what you will. If all they feel is your boundaries, they never feel your openness. If all they experience is your strength, they never experience your softness. And softness is not weakness. Warmth is not people-pleasing. Openness is not the same as being a doormat. But somewhere along the way, you started to believe that showing softness would make you vulnerable. That being warm would invite people to take advantage. That openness would mean letting in the wrong people. So you stopped. You became guarded, protected, strong. And people respected that strength, but they did not feel welcomed by it. Here is what happens. When you set boundaries without warmth, people do not just see the boundary, they feel rejected. When you have standards without openness, people do not just see the standard, they feel judged. When you show strength without softness, people do not just see your strength, they see someone who does not need them. And most people do not pursue someone who seems like they do not need anyone. This is not about fairness. It is not about what you should have to do or what people should be able to handle. It is about what actually happens. And what actually happens is that people are drawn to warmth. They move toward openness. They stay where they feel wanted. And if you do not signal that they are wanted, if you do not show that there is space for them, they assume there is not, and they go somewhere else. You might think that is their loss, that if they cannot handle your boundaries, they are not strong enough for you. And maybe that is true. But it is also possible that they could handle your boundaries if they felt your warmth, that they could respect your standards if they also felt your openness, that they could appreciate your strength if they also experienced your softness. Because strength without warmth does not just protect you, it isolates you. It sends the message that you are fine on your own, that you do not need connection, that you are not looking for closeness. And people believe that message, not because they are weak, but because they do not want to force themselves on someone who seems content without them. Here is what it looks like in practice. You meet someone new. They are interested. They reach out. They try to connect, and you respond. But your responses are measured, controlled. You do not give too much. You do not show too much enthusiasm. You do not make it easy. Because you are testing them. You want to see if they will put in the effort, if they will pursue you even when you are not encouraging it, if they will prove they are serious. And some people pass that test. They keep trying. They keep showing up. They prove they are consistent. But most people do not because they are not interested, but because effort without reciprocation feels like rejection, and they do not know if you are playing hard to get or if you are just not interested, so they stop. Not because they gave up on you, but because they could not tell if you wanted them to keep trying, or you are already in a relationship, and your partner tries to be affectionate. They reach for you. They try to connect. And you are not cold. You do not push them away. But you do not lean in either. You receive their affection, but you do not return it with the same energy. You accept their effort, but you do not match it. And over time, they stop trying as much. Not because they stopped caring, but because reaching for someone who does not reach back is exhausting, and they start to wonder if you even want them. If you even miss them, if you even notice when they pull back. Or you are with friends, and they are laughing, sharing, being vulnerable, and you are there. You are listening. You are present. But you are not participating in the same way. You are not sharing your own stories. You are not being vulnerable. You are supportive, but you are distant. And they do not push you. They do not ask why. They just stop sharing as deeply with you. Because vulnerability is reciprocal. And if you are not offering yours, they start to hold theirs back too. This is how high standards without warmth creates distance. You are not doing anything wrong. You are just not doing enough of what makes people feel safe, what makes them feel wanted, what makes them feel like they matter to you. And without that signal, they assume they do not, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. Here is the mechanism. Warmth is a nervous system signal. It tells other people that you are safe, that you are open, that connection is possible. When you smile, when you laugh, when you show enthusiasm, when you express affection, when you reach out first, you are sending signals that say, I am glad you are here. I want you around. You matter to me. But when you are guarded, when you are measured, when you are controlled, when you hold back, you are not sending those signals. You might feel them. You might want connection. But if you are not expressing it, people do not know. They cannot read your mind. They can only read your behavior. And your behavior says, I am fine without you. I do not need this. I am not sure I even want this. And people believe that, not because they want to, but because they do not want to impose. They do not want to force themselves on you. They do not want to be the person who is trying too hard. So they match your energy. And if your energy is low, if your warmth is minimal, if your openness is guarded, they stay at a distance. Not because they do not care, but because they think that is what you want. So how do you fix this? How do you keep your standards without losing your warmth? How do you stay strong without seeming cold? How do you protect yourself without isolating yourself? You start by understanding that warmth is not weakness, that showing people you are glad they are around does not make you desperate, that expressing affection does not make you vulnerable in a bad way, that being open does not mean you are lowering your standards. It just means you are making space for people to meet them. You can have boundaries and warmth. You can have standards and openness. You can have strength and softness. They are not opposites. They are complements. Boundaries without warmth are walls. Warmth without boundaries is codependency. You need both. You need to protect yourself and invite people in. You need to be clear about what you will not tolerate and clear about what you will welcome. Here is the exercise. Think about the last time someone reached out to you. A text, an invitation, a gesture. How did you respond? Did you match their energy? Did you show enthusiasm? Did you make them feel wanted? Or did you respond politely but distantly? Warmly but reservedly? Present but protected? Now think about how you would have responded if you were not worried about seeming too eager, if you were not worried about giving too much, if you were not worried about being vulnerable. How would you have responded then? That version, the one without the guard, is not naive. It is not desperate. It is not weak. It is just honest. It is the version of you that actually wants connection. And that version deserves to be expressed, not with everyone, not recklessly, but with people who have shown up, who have earned it, who deserve to know that you are not just tolerating them, that you actually want them around. Because here is the truth. People do not just want to be allowed into your life, they want to be welcomed. They want to feel like their presence matters, like you notice when they are there and miss them when they are not. Like they are not just passing your tests, but actually adding to your life. And if you never show them that, if you never express warmth, if you never signal that they matter, they will not stay. Not because they are weak, but because everyone, even the strongest people, needs to feel wanted. And you cannot expect people to keep showing up when you never show them that you are glad they did. Strength is attractive, but warmth is what makes people stay. Standards are important, but openness is what makes people try. Boundaries are necessary, but softness is what makes people feel safe. You do not have to choose one or the other. You can have both. You can be strong and warm, clear and open, protected and inviting. You just have to stop believing that showing warmth makes you weak. Because it does not. It makes you human, and being human is the only way to connect with other humans. Chapter 8. Secure Intimacy. How to connect without losing yourself. He thought he had two options, either stay guarded and alone, or open up and lose himself, either keep his boundaries and stay distant, or let someone in and risk becoming the person he used to be. The person who gave too much, who needed too much, who lost himself in other people, so he stayed in the middle. Close enough to avoid complete isolation, distant enough to avoid losing control. He had relationships, but they never went deep. He had connections, but they never felt secure. He was present, but never fully there. And he told himself that was just how it had to be, that you could not have both. That intimacy required sacrifice. That connection meant losing yourself. But then he met someone who did not fit that pattern, someone who was close but not clingy, someone who cared but did not need constant reassurance, someone who was vulnerable but not fragile, someone who let him in without demanding that he stay. And he realized that everything he thought about intimacy was wrong. Intimacy did not require losing yourself. It required knowing yourself so well that being close to someone else did not threaten that. It did not require giving up your boundaries. It required having boundaries that were strong enough to hold both connection and autonomy. It did not require choosing between independence and closeness. It required integrating both. This is what secure intimacy looks like, and most people never experience it, because they think intimacy means dependence, that caring about someone means needing them, that being close means losing your sense of self. And if that is what intimacy means, then of course you avoid it. Of course you keep people at a distance. Of course you protect yourself from it, but that is not intimacy. That is codependency. And codependency is what happens when two people who do not know themselves try to complete each other. When they use the relationship to fill the gaps they have not learned to fill themselves. When they look to each other for validation, identity, purpose, worth. And when that happens, the relationship becomes everything. It becomes the center, the foundation, the only thing that matters. And when it shifts, when it cracks, when it ends, everything collapses. Because there was no self underneath. Just two people holding each other up. Secure intimacy is different. It is when two whole people choose to be close, not because they need each other, but because they want each other. Not because they complete each other, but because they complement each other. Not because they cannot survive alone, but because they prefer not to. That kind of intimacy does not threaten your independence. It enhances it. Because you are not giving up who you are to be with someone. You are bringing who you are into the relationship. And they are doing the same. And instead of merging into one blurred identity, you remain two distinct people who have chosen to walk together. But getting to that place requires something most people are not willing to do. It requires being comfortable with yourself first. Not perfect, not healed from everything, not without wounds or fears or triggers, but comfortable, stable, grounded in who you are independent of anyone else. Because if you do not know who you are when you are alone, you will lose yourself the moment someone gets close. You will start adapting, adjusting, becoming what they need, what they want, what makes them stay. And before you know it, you are not yourself anymore. You are a version of yourself shaped by their presence. And that version feels safe as long as they are there. But the moment they leave, the moment they pull back, you do not know who you are anymore. Because you built yourself around them, and now they are gone, and so are you. This is why emotional independence has to come first, not so you can stay alone, but so you can be close without disappearing. So you can let someone in without losing yourself. So you can care deeply without needing desperately. So you can be vulnerable without being fragile. Here is what secure intimacy requires. First, it requires self-awareness. You have to know what you feel, what you need, what you value, what you will tolerate and what you will not in theory, in practice. You have to have spent enough time with yourself to know how you respond under pressure. What triggers you, what calms you, what you need when you are struggling, and what you do not need even when you think you do. Most people skip this step. They go straight from one relationship to another. They do not spend time alone. They do not sit with themselves. They do not learn who they are outside of someone else's presence. So they bring the same patterns into every relationship, the same wounds, the same fears, the same need for someone else to make them feel whole. And they wonder why it never works, why they keep ending up in the same dynamic, why they keep losing themselves. Second, it requires emotional regulation. You have to be able to manage your own emotional state. Not perfectly, but consistently. You have to be able to self-soothe when you are anxious, to calm yourself when you are triggered, to sit with discomfort without needing someone else to fix it, to process your emotions without making them someone else's responsibility. Because if you cannot regulate yourself, you will rely on someone else to do it for you. You will need them to reassure you, to validate you, to calm you down, to make you feel secure. And that need will turn into pressure for them to always be available, always responsive, always attuned to your emotional state. And that pressure will suffocate the relationship. Because no one can carry another person's nervous system. No one can be responsible for someone else's emotional stability. Not sustainably. Not without burning out. Third, it requires boundaries. Real boundaries. Not walls, not rules. Boundaries that protect your autonomy while allowing connection. Boundaries that say, I care about you, but I will not lose myself in you. I want to be close, but I will not sacrifice my peace to keep you. I value this relationship, but I value myself more. And those boundaries have to be communicated, clearly, calmly, without apology, not as ultimatums, as statements of fact. This is what I need. This is what I can offer. This is where I draw the line. And if someone cannot respect that, they are not the right person. Not because they are bad, but because they need something you cannot give without betraying yourself. Fourth, it requires vulnerability without neediness. This is the hardest part, because most people think vulnerability means depending on someone, needing them, giving them the power to hurt you. But that is not vulnerability. That is surrender. Vulnerability is letting someone see you without needing them to fix you, sharing your feelings without needing them to change, being honest about your struggles without making them responsible for solving them. Vulnerability is not I need you to make me feel better. It is I am struggling and I am letting you see that. Vulnerability is not I cannot do this without you. It is I can do this alone, but I would rather do it with you. Vulnerability is not prove to me that you will not leave. It is I am scared you might leave, but I am choosing to be here anyway. That kind of vulnerability builds intimacy, because it is honest without being demanding. It is open without being dependent. It invites someone in without trapping them there. Fifth, it requires space, not distance. Space. Space for both people to exist as individuals. Space for autonomy, for separate interests, for time alone, for friendships outside the relationship, for growth that happens independently. Because if you are together all the time, if you do everything together, if you have no life outside of each other, you will start to lose yourselves, you will merge. And merging feels like closeness at first. But over time it becomes suffocation. Secure intimacy breathes. It expands and contracts. It allows closeness and distance. It trusts that space does not mean separation. That time apart does not mean drifting. That independence does not threaten connection. It trusts that you can be individuals and still be together. That you can have your own life and still share a life. That you do not have to choose. Here is what it looks like in practice. You have a hard day. You are struggling. And instead of calling them immediately, needing them to fix it, you sit with it first. You process it. You regulate yourself. And then, once you are stable, you share it with them. Not because you need them to solve it, but because you want them to know you, to see you, to understand what you are going through. And they listen. They hold space. They support you. But they do not take on your emotions. They do not try to fix you. They just stay present. And that presence without the pressure to fix feels like real intimacy. Or they need space. They are overwhelmed. They need time alone. And instead of panicking, instead of interpreting that as rejection, instead of making it about you, you let them go. You trust that their need for space is about them, not about you. You trust that they will come back. That space does not mean distance, that they can need time alone and still care about you. And when they come back, you do not punish them. You do not make them prove they still care. You just welcome them. And that trust, without the need for constant reassurance, builds security. Or you have a conflict, a disagreement, a moment of tension, and instead of shutting down or exploding, instead of withdrawing or attacking, you stay present. You speak honestly. You listen without defending. You acknowledge their perspective without abandoning your own. You work through it together, not by one person winning, but by both people being willing to stay in the discomfort until you find something that works for both of you. And that willingness to stay, to work through it, to not run when things get hard, that is what builds secure intimacy. Here's the exercise. Think about your current or most recent relationship. Ask yourself these questions. Do I know who I am outside of this relationship? Can I regulate my emotions without needing the other person to soothe me? Do I have boundaries that I actually enforce? Can I be vulnerable without being needy? Do I allow space without panicking? If the answer to any of those is no, that is where the work is. That is what is keeping you from secure intimacy. Not the other person, not the relationship, you. And the good news is, you can change that. You can develop those skills. You can become the kind of person who can be close without losing themselves, who can be vulnerable without being fragile, who can care deeply without needing desperately. Because secure intimacy is not something you find. It is something you build, and you build it by becoming secure in yourself first, by knowing who you are, by regulating your emotions, by setting boundaries, by being vulnerable without being dependent, by creating space without creating distance. And when you do that, when you bring that version of yourself into a relationship, everything changes. You are not looking for someone to complete you. You are looking for someone to walk with. You are not looking for someone to save you. You are looking for someone to see you. You are not looking for someone to fill your gaps. You are looking for someone who complements your wholeness. And that kind of relationship built on two whole people choosing each other, that is the only kind worth having. Because it does not require you to lose yourself. It requires you to bring yourself fully, honestly, completely, and that, more than anything, is what real intimacy is. Chapter 9. The Loneliness Signal, Reading It Without Obeying It. She woke up in the middle of the night with the feeling pressing against her chest. Not sadness, not anxiety, just loneliness. The kind that sits heavy, that makes the room feel too big. That makes you reach for your phone even though you know no one is awake, even though you know scrolling will not fix it. She used to panic when this feeling came, used to think it meant something was wrong, that she made a mistake, that she pushed people away, that she needed to fix it immediately, needed to reach out, reconnect, make plans, do something, anything to make the feeling stop. But this time she just lay there, not ignoring it, not distracting herself from it, just feeling it. And as she did, something became clear. The loneliness was not telling her she needed people. It was telling her she was afraid of needing people. It was not a signal that she was isolated. It was a signal that she was still healing from the time when isolation felt safer than connection. The loneliness was not the problem, it was information. And she did not have to obey it. She just had to understand it. This is one of the most important shifts you can make. Learning to read your loneliness instead of reacting to it. Because loneliness is not always what it seems. Sometimes it is real, a genuine signal that you need more connection, that you have been isolating too much, that you need to reach out, to engage, to let people in. But sometimes loneliness is not about lack of people. It is about lack of intimacy with yourself, about the discomfort of being alone with your own thoughts, about the fear of sitting in silence without distraction, about the habit of needing external stimulation to feel okay. And sometimes loneliness is a nervous system alarm, a trauma response that gets triggered when you are still, when you are safe, when you are alone but not in danger. Your body remembers a time when being alone meant being unsafe, and it sends signals to get you to seek connection, not because you need it, but because it thinks you are in danger. If you do not know the difference, you will react to every wave of loneliness the same way. You will reach out, make plans, fill your calendar, seek validation, look for connection. And sometimes that is the right move, but sometimes it is just avoidance. Sometimes it is you running from the discomfort of being with yourself. And running does not solve it, it just delays it. Here is how to tell the difference. Real loneliness, the kind that signals genuine lack of connection, feels steady. It does not spike and crash. It does not come out of nowhere, it builds over time. It is there when you wake up and there when you go to sleep. It does not go away when you distract yourself, it just sits, waiting, reminding you that you have been disconnected too long, that you need to engage. That isolation, even chosen isolation, has a cost. That kind of loneliness should be listened to. It is your system telling you that you are a social being, that you need connection, that independence is not the same as isolation, that you can be strong and still need people, that you have been in your head too long and you need to come back to the world. But trauma loneliness feels different. It comes in waves, it spikes at night. It hits when you are still, when you are safe. When there is nothing to distract you, it feels urgent, desperate, like something is wrong right now and you need to fix it immediately. And when you reach out, when you connect, when you get a response, it eases. But only temporarily, because it was never about connection. It was about soothing a nervous system that does not yet believe that being alone is safe. That kind of loneliness should not be obeyed. It should be felt, observed, understood, but not acted on. Because acting on it reinforces the pattern. It teaches your nervous system that being alone is dangerous, that you need external validation to feel okay, that you cannot sit with yourself without reaching for someone else. And the more you reinforce that, the stronger it gets. The more dependent you become on other people to regulate your emotional state. The less capable you become of being alone without spiraling. The more you lose the independence you worked so hard to build. So what do you do when the loneliness hits? First, pause. Do not reach for your phone. Do not text someone. Do not scroll. Do not distract. Just sit with it. Feel where it is in your body. Is it in your chest, your stomach, your throat? Does it feel heavy or tight or empty? Just notice. Do not judge it. Do not try to make it go away. Just be with it. Then ask yourself what it is trying to tell you. Is this real loneliness? Have I been isolated too long? Have I been avoiding connection? Have I been so focused on protecting myself that I forgot to let people in? Or is this trauma loneliness? Is this my nervous system reacting to stillness? Is this old fear dressed up as current need? Is this the part of me that learned being alone meant being abandoned? You do not always know right away. Sometimes you have to sit with it longer. Sometimes you have to feel it for days before you understand what it is. But the practice of asking, of pausing, of not immediately reacting, that practice builds discernment. It teaches you to read your own signals, to know when loneliness is information and when it is just noise. Here is what happens when you start doing this. The trauma loneliness loses its power. Not right away, but gradually. Because every time you sit with it instead of obeying it, you prove to your nervous system that being alone is not dangerous, that you do not need someone else to regulate you. that you can feel uncomfortable and survive it. And over time, the alarm stops firing as often. The loneliness becomes less urgent, less desperate, less convincing. And when the real loneliness comes, the kind that signals genuine need for connection, you recognize it, you trust it, you act on it, not impulsively, not desperately, but intentionally. You reach out, you make plans, you engage, not because you are running from discomfort, but because you genuinely want connection. And that wanting, when it comes from a grounded place, leads to real connection, not just temporary relief. Here is what it looks like in practice. You feel lonely on a Saturday night. Everyone else seems to be out, seems to have plans, seems to be connected, and you are alone. And the loneliness feels unbearable. Every instinct tells you to fix it, to reach out, to make plans, to do something, but you pause, you sit with it, you feel it. And you realize this loneliness is not about tonight. It is about the pattern, about the belief that being alone on a Saturday night means something is wrong with you, that everyone else has it figured out and you do not, that you are falling behind, missing out, losing. And once you see that, the loneliness shifts. It is still there, but it is not as urgent, not as convincing, because you know it is not real. It is just a story, a fear, a comparison, and you do not have to obey it. You can just let it be. And eventually it passes, not because you fixed it, but because you stopped feeding it. Or you go through a breakup, and the loneliness is crushing. You reach for your phone 100 times a day. You want to text them, to reach out, to see if they miss you, to check if they are thinking about you, to know you still matter. And the loneliness tells you that you need them, that you cannot do this alone, that you made a mistake, that you should go back. But you pause, you sit with it, you feel it, and you realize this loneliness is not about missing them. It is about missing the version of yourself that had someone, the version that did not have to sit with the fear that maybe you are not enough, that maybe you will always be alone, that maybe no one will ever choose you the way you want to be chosen. And once you see that, you realize the loneliness is not asking you to go back. It is asking you to stay, to sit with the discomfort of not knowing what comes next, to trust that you will be okay even if you are alone, to prove to yourself that you do not need someone else to feel whole. And that sitting, that staying, that proving, that is what builds real independence. Not the kind that keeps people out, the kind that lets you be alone without falling apart. Here's the mechanism. Loneliness is a social pain signal. It evolved to keep humans connected, because for most of history, being alone meant death. So your brain developed a system that makes aloneness feel painful, that creates discomfort when you are isolated, that pushes you to seek connection. And that system kept your ancestors alive. But in modern life, being alone does not mean death. It just means being alone. And your brain has not caught up. It still treats aloneness as a threat. It still sends pain signals to get you to reconnect. And if you do not understand that, if you think every pain signal is accurate, you will spend your life running from discomfort that is not actually dangerous. The goal is not to eliminate loneliness. It is to develop a relationship with it, to understand what it is telling you, to distinguish between the loneliness that signals real need and the loneliness that signals old fear, to respond to the former and sit with the latter, to know when to reach out and when to stay still. Here is the exercise. The next time you feel lonely, do not react. Do not reach for your phone. Do not make plans. Do not distract yourself. Just sit with it for 10 minutes. Set a timer. Feel it. Notice where it is in your body. Notice what thoughts come with it. Notice what it is asking you to do. Then ask yourself, is this real? Do I genuinely need more connection? Or is this just discomfort? Is this my nervous system panicking because I am still? Is this an old pattern trying to pull me back into seeking validation? You do not have to know the answer right away. You just have to ask the question. And the more you ask it, the better you get at reading your own signals, at knowing what is real and what is noise, at responding to loneliness without being controlled by it. Because loneliness is not the enemy. Reacting to it blindly is. Loneliness is just information, and information, when understood correctly, helps you make better choices. Choices that lead to real connection, not just temporary relief, not just distraction, real connection. The kind that fills the space, the kind that lasts, the kind that does not require you to lose yourself to find it. Chapter 10. Choosing people, not needing people. The new relationship model. He used to think love meant need, that if you did not need someone, you did not really care. That dependence was proof of connection, that the more you could not live without someone, the more real the relationship was. So he looked for that. He looked for someone he could not imagine life without, someone who filled every gap, someone who made him feel complete. And when he found that, it felt like everything. Like he finally understood what people meant when they talked about love. Like he had been incomplete his whole life and now he was whole. It was intense, consuming, all-encompassing. And he thought that was what it was supposed to feel like, until it ended. And when it ended, he did not just lose her. He lost himself, because he had built his identity around her. His routines, his sense of purpose, his emotional stability, everything was tied to her presence. And when she left, all of it collapsed. He did not know who he was anymore, did not know what to do with his time, did not know how to feel okay without her there to regulate him. That is when he realized need is not love. Need is fear. Fear that you are not enough on your own. Fear that without this person you will fall apart. Fear that being alone means being empty. And that fear, no matter how much it feels like love, is not sustainable. Because people are not meant to complete you. They are meant to complement you. And there is a difference. This is the new relationship model. Not need-based, choice-based, not driven by fear of being alone, driven by desire to walk together, not about filling gaps, about sharing fullness, not about dependence, about interdependence, not about I cannot live without you, about I can live without you but I do not want to. And that shift from needing to choosing changes everything. Because when you need someone, you are afraid to lose them. You tolerate things you should not tolerate. You ignore red flags. You compromise your boundaries. You shrink yourself to keep them. You perform to keep them interested. You sacrifice to keep them around. Not because you want to, but because the thought of losing them feels like losing yourself. But when you choose someone, you are free. Free to be yourself, free to have boundaries, free to walk away if the relationship stops serving you. Free to stay because you want to, not because you need to. And that freedom paradoxically creates deeper connection, because the other person knows you are there by choice, not by obligation, not by fear, not by need, by choice. And being chosen, truly chosen, feels completely different than being needed. Here is what need-based relationships look like. You text them constantly. Not because you have something to say, but because you need reassurance. You need to know they are thinking about you. You need proof that they still care. And when they do not respond quickly, you panic, you spiral, you create stories, you assume the worst. Because your nervous system is in constant alarm, constantly scanning for signs that they are pulling away, that they are losing interest, that they are about to leave. You cannot make decisions without them. You check in before doing anything. You need their approval, their validation, their input. Not because you value their opinion, but because you do not trust your own. You have outsourced your decision-making, your sense of self, your emotional stability, and now you cannot function without them. You lose yourself in the relationship. You stop doing things you used to love, stop seeing friends, stop pursuing your own goals. Because the relationship becomes everything. It becomes your identity, your purpose, your world. And you tell yourself that is what love looks like. That is what commitment looks like. But it is not love. It is enmeshment. And enmeshment suffocates both people. You are terrified of conflict. Because conflict feels like the beginning of the end. So you avoid it. You suppress your feelings. You go along with things you do not agree with. You stay silent when you should speak up. You sacrifice your needs to keep the peace. Because keeping the peace feels safer than risking the relationship. And you do not realize that avoiding conflict is killing the relationship just as much as constant conflict would. You tolerate bad behavior because you need them too much to leave. They disrespect you, they take you for granted, they do not show up the way they should, and you accept it. You make excuses, you convince yourself it is not that bad. You lower your standards to match their effort. Because the alternative, being alone, feels worse than being mistreated. That is what need does. It traps you. It makes you small. It makes you desperate. It makes you willing to sacrifice anything to keep someone who might not even be right for you. And it does not just hurt you. It hurts the relationship. Because no one wants to be needed that desperately. No one wants the pressure of being someone's entire world. No one wants to feel like they cannot leave without destroying you. Now here is what choice-based relationships look like. You have your own life, your own friends, your own goals, your own routines, your own identity, and the relationship adds to that life. It does not replace it. You are whole on your own, and they are whole on their own. And you come together because you want to, not because you need to. You communicate clearly, because you are not afraid of conflict. You know, conflict does not mean the relationship is over. It just means two people are being honest. And honesty, even when it is uncomfortable, builds trust. You speak up when something bothers you. You set boundaries when something crosses a line. You have hard conversations when they are needed, and the relationship gets stronger because of it, not weaker. You trust them, not blindly. But genuinely, you do not need constant reassurance. You do not need them to prove they care every single day. You know they care because they show up, consistently. And that consistency is enough. You do not panic when they need space. You do not spiral when they are busy. You do not interpret distance as rejection. Because you are secure enough in yourself to trust that their need for space is not about you. You respect their autonomy. You do not try to control them. You do not guilt them for having a life outside of you. You do not make them choose between you and their friends, their hobbies, their goals. You celebrate their independence. You encourage their growth, even when that growth takes them away from you temporarily. Because you know that two whole people make a better relationship than two dependent people. You stay because you want to, not because you are afraid to leave. Not because you have invested too much. Not because you do not think you will find anyone else. You stay because the relationship is good. Because it adds to your life. Because you are better with them than without them. But you know you would be okay without them. And that knowledge, that confidence, that security makes staying a choice. And choice is what makes it real. Here is the mechanism. Need-based relationships are driven by the limbic system, the part of your brain that processes emotion, attachment, fear. It operates on instinct, on survival, on the belief that connection equals safety, that losing someone equals danger, that being alone equals death. It is fast, automatic, powerful, and it overrides logic. Choice-based relationships engage the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that processes reasoning, planning, long-term thinking. It is slower, more intentional. It evaluates. It weighs options. It makes decisions based on values, not just feelings. It asks, is this good for me? Does this align with who I am? Does this relationship support my growth? And it stays or leaves based on those answers, not based on fear. The shift from need to choice is the shift from reactive to intentional, from survival to thriving, from dependence to partnership. And that shift does not happen overnight. It requires work, self-awareness, emotional regulation, the ability to be alone without falling apart, the ability to be close without losing yourself, the ability to choose someone without clinging to them. Here is what it requires in practice. First, you have to be okay alone. Not just okay, actually okay. You have to have built a life that feels full even when no one else is in it. You have to have routines that ground you, hobbies that fulfill you, friends who see you, goals that excite you, a sense of self that exists independent of anyone else. Because if you are empty alone, you will cling to anyone who fills that emptiness, and clinging is not choosing. Second, you have to know your values, what matters to you, what you will not compromise on, what you need in a relationship and what you do not. Not what you think you should need, what you actually need. And you have to be willing to walk away from anyone who does not meet those needs. Not because you are picky, but because you know yourself well enough to know what works for you and what does not. Third, you have to trust yourself. To trust that you will be okay if this does not work out. That you can handle heartbreak. That you have survived loss before and you will survive it again. That being alone is not the worst thing that can happen. That losing yourself is. And that as long as you do not lose yourself, you will be okay. No matter what happens. Fourth, you have to communicate like an adult, clearly, directly, without games, without manipulation, without testing. You say what you mean. You ask for what you need. You express how you feel. And you trust the other person to do the same. And if they cannot, if they play games, if they are inconsistent, if they are unclear, you do not chase. You do not try to decode, you just walk away. Because you are not looking for someone to figure out. You are looking for someone who shows up clearly. Fifth, you have to be willing to lose them, not because you do not care, but because you care about yourself more. You know that staying in the wrong relationship is worse than being alone. That tolerating bad behavior is worse than being single. That shrinking yourself to keep someone is worse than letting them go. And that willingness to lose them, that ability to walk away, is what makes the relationship healthy. Because they know you are not there out of desperation. You are there out of choice. Here is the exercise. Think about your current or most recent relationship. Ask yourself these questions honestly. Do I need this person or do I choose them? Am I afraid to be without them or do I genuinely prefer being with them? Do I tolerate things I should not tolerate because I am afraid of being alone? Do I have my own life outside of this relationship or has the relationship become my entire life? If the answers make you uncomfortable, that is good. Discomfort means awareness, and awareness is the first step to change. You cannot shift from needing to choosing if you do not first see how much you have been operating from need, how much fear has been driving you, how much you have been clinging instead of connecting. And once you see it, you can change it. You can start building a life that feels full on its own. You can start setting boundaries. You can start communicating clearly. You can start trusting yourself. You can start choosing instead of needing. And when you do, everything changes. Not just the relationship, you. Because you are no longer someone who needs to be saved. You are someone who chooses to walk with another person. And that version of you, that grounded, intentional, secure version, is the only version capable of real intimacy. The kind that lasts. The kind that does not require you to lose yourself. The kind that is built on two whole people choosing each other. Every single day. Conclusion. You did everything right. You set boundaries. You stopped chasing. You built a life that does not need anyone's permission to exist. You became the person you always wanted to be. Strong, grounded, independent. And then you looked around and realized the world felt quieter than you expected. Emptier. Lonelier. And you wondered if you went too far. If you became too strong. If independence cost you connection. If the price of not needing anyone was not being close to anyone. And maybe you thought about going back, softening your edges, lowering your standards, making yourself easier, just so someone would stay. But you cannot go back, not really, because once you know what you know, once you have tasted freedom, once you have felt what it is like to not shrink, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to the version of yourself that gave too much, that needed too much, that lost herself in other people. That version kept you connected, but it also kept you small, and you are not small anymore. So here you are, in the gap, the space between who you were and who you are becoming, the space where you are more yourself than ever but lonelier than you have been in years. And no one told you this part would be hard. No one told you that growth feels like loss, that strength feels like isolation, that independence feels like exile. But it does not have to stay that way, because the loneliness you feel right now is not permanent. It is transitional. It is the space between leaving the wrong people and finding the right ones, between closing the door on what does not serve you and opening the door to what does, between building walls and learning to build bridges. The loneliness is not proof you did something wrong. It is proof you did something right. You stopped settling. You stopped performing. You stopped accepting less than you deserve. And yes, that cleared your life. But clearing is necessary before building. You cannot fill your life with the right people if it is already full of the wrong ones. And right now, your life is clear, empty, ready. And that emptiness, painful as it is space. Space for something real. But here is what you have to understand. The people who are meant for you, the ones who can meet you where you are, who can handle your boundaries, who can appreciate your strength, who can see you without needing you to shrink, those people are not going to show up if you are hiding, if you are guarded, if you have built walls so high that no one can reach you, if you have convinced yourself that staying distant is the same as staying safe. You have to let them in. Not everyone, not recklessly, but the ones who have earned it, the ones who show up consistently, the ones who respect your boundaries without making you feel cold for having them. The ones who can handle your independence without feeling threatened by it. Those people exist, but they cannot reach you if you keep pushing them away. And yes, letting them in is risky. Yes, they could hurt you. Yes, you could lose them. Yes, it could go wrong. But it could also go right. It could be the connection you have been craving, the intimacy that does not require you to lose yourself, the relationship that is built on two whole people choosing each other. And you will never know unless you try. So here is what you do. You stop waiting for the loneliness to go away before you open up. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop waiting for the perfect person who will make vulnerability feel safe. Because vulnerability never feels safe. It always feels like risk. And the only way to build connection is to take that risk. Not blindly, not desperately, but intentionally. With people who have shown you they can be trusted, with people who have proven they can hold space for you, with people who see your strength and do not try to dim it. You practice warmth without losing your boundaries. You practice openness without losing your discernment. You practice softness without losing your strength. Because you can have both. You can be strong and warm, protected and open, independent and connected. You just have to stop believing that one cancels out the other. You read your loneliness instead of obeying it. You distinguish between the loneliness that signals real need for connection and the loneliness that signals old fear. You respond to the former. You sit with the latter. You do not let it control you. You do not let it send you running back to dynamics that do not serve you. You let it teach you. Let it show you what you actually need. And then you act on that need intentionally, not impulsively, not desperately, intentionally. You choose people instead of needing them. You build relationships based on desire, not dependence. You stay because you want to, not because you are afraid to leave. You let people in because they add to your life, not because they complete it. And that shift from needing to choosing transforms everything. Because you are no longer at the mercy of other people's behavior. You are no longer desperate to be chosen. You are just present, grounded, whole. And that version of you, that secure version, is magnetic. Not because you are performing, but because you are real. And here is the truth. The right people will not be scared of your independence. They will not see your boundaries as walls. They will not interpret your strength as coldness. They will see someone who knows herself, someone who has done the work, someone who is whole on her own and choosing to share that wholeness. And that, to the right people, is not intimidating. It is inspiring. But you have to believe that. You have to believe that your independence is not a flaw, that your strength is not a barrier, that your boundaries are not punishment, that you are not too much or not enough, that you are exactly who you need to be. And that the right people will see that, will appreciate that, will choose you because of that, not despite it. So stop shrinking. Stop softening your edges to make other people comfortable. Stop lowering your standards to make connection easier. Stop performing warmth to prove you are not cold. Stop apologizing for being who you are. Because who you are is not the problem. Who you were attracting was. And now that you are no longer attracting those people, now that you have cleared the space, you can build something real. It will not happen overnight. It will not be easy. You will have moments where the loneliness feels unbearable, where you question everything, where you wonder if it is worth it. And in those moments, you have to remember why you started, why you set boundaries, why you stopped chasing, why you chose yourself. Because going back is not an option, not if you want to keep the part of yourself you fought so hard to find. The loneliness will not last forever, but the version of yourself you became will, the strength, the clarity, the self-respect, the ability to be alone without falling apart, the ability to be close without losing yourself. That stays, and that, more than any relationship, is what will carry you through life. So be patient, be intentional, be open, but do not go back, do not shrink, do not settle. Because the right people are coming, the ones who can meet you where you are, the ones who do not need you to be smaller, the ones who see your independence and feel relief, not rejection, the ones who understand that you do not need them, but you are choosing them. And that choice, that conscious, grounded, secure choice, is the foundation of everything real. You are not alone because you are unlovable. You are alone because you stopped accepting love that required you to be less than who you are. And that aloneness, temporary as it is the price of freedom, the price of integrity, the price of becoming whole, and it is worth it. Every moment of discomfort, every wave of loneliness, every doubt, it is worth it. Because you are building a life that is yours. Not a life shaped by fear, not a life built on dependence, not a life where you have to perform to be accepted. A life where you can be yourself, fully, completely, without apology. And that life, once built, will attract the right people, the ones who do not need you to change, the ones who choose you exactly as you are, the ones who make you feel seen without making you feel small. the ones who prove that connection and independence can coexist, that you do not have to choose, that you can have both. So keep going, keep building, keep choosing yourself, and trust that the loneliness you feel now is not the end of the story. It is just the middle, the part where everything is uncertain, the part where you do not know what comes next, the part where you have to trust the process even when it feels impossible. But you have come this far. You have done the hardest part. You chose yourself when it would have been easier to stay small. You walked away when it would have been easier to stay. You built boundaries when it would have been easier to have none. And that courage, that strength, that commitment to yourself, that is what will carry you through. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not unlovable. You are just becoming. And becoming is messy, uncomfortable, lonely. But it is also necessary, and on the other side of it is a version of yourself you will be proud of. A version that is whole, secure, grounded. A version that does not need anyone but is open to the right people. A version that has learned to choose instead of need, to connect instead of cling, to be vulnerable instead of desperate. And that version, the one you are becoming, is worth every moment of loneliness, every moment of doubt, every moment of discomfort, because that version is free. And freedom, once tasted, is irreplaceable, so trust the process. Trust yourself, and trust that the right people are on their way, not because you need them, but because you. If this audiobook has brought you clarity, strength, or peace, consider supporting the channel so more people can find this message. Please like this audio and subscribe. Your support helps this work reach those who feel overwhelmed, anxious, or unprotected, and gives them a path back to calm, confidence, and emotional freedom. Thank you for listening. Stay grounded. Stay wise. You are the anchor in every storm.